Welcome back everybody to another episode of MOTOBOB Vlogs, and we're out today on the brand new BMW R1300 GS, and I'm quite excited about this one because normally I ride to pick the bikes up. It's a great opportunity to, test them out when you're bringing them back from the press garage of the manufacturers, but given that it's January, I actually picked this one up in the van, which you'll see next to me. And so this is genuinely, despite the fact that I've shot a studio walk around last week, genuinely this is the first time I've ever ridden it. The first time I've even switched the engine on. So I'm really looking forward to finding out whether it's as good as they say and whether all these little tweaks and changes that they've made have actually had any noticeable effect. I mean, first things first, I've got to say the adaptive ride height is fitted to this bike. And that means despite the fact that it has a fixed 850mm seat height, there's no adjustability in the saddle itself apart from the angle. It does feel really easy to climb on and pull away on. It just feels like a normal regular street bike that would be around that 820mm mark. And yet once you're out on the road, it springs back up to a regular ride height and gives you that, typical commanding, visible adventure bike riding position. So I don't know, a lot of tech seems to be pretty divisive, but I think adaptive ride height, especially if you're not that confident on tall bikes and you want to max it out with luggage or maybe a passenger and that's making it feel even more tippy, then it's going to be really, really tempting. The other thing I love about it, I'll cut a clip on the top of this one now, is the jack up feature, which makes it really, really easy to get it up onto the center stand. It basically, when it detects the center stand coming down, maxes out the preload, I guess, on the rear shock and gets it right up high. So it just pops onto the center stand, no problem. My own Tiger 800 is a real pain in the arse to get up on the stand, so I rarely ever use it. But with this, even though it's a heavier bike, no probs. I reckon it'd be easy as well with luggage. Now, one thing I picked up on straight away in the studio without having to ride it is the fact that it's got this rocker switch over on the left-hand switch gear. Effectively, the idea of this is to make it easier to access your favorite settings. So at the moment, I've got it set to the electric windscreen, which I think is the first now for the GS, but it works really nicely. As you can see, this is pretty tall and it feels quite quiet, although I have to do a bit of motorway work to get the full picture. But yeah, you can then hit this little customize button on the top there and choose whatever you want for this rocker switch. So if I'm done messing with the windscreen but I want to try some of the other settings or easily access them, then you can switch it. So I'm going to put it on heating, and that's going to give me heated grips, thankfully. It's a little bit on the chilly side today. I've got my heated vest on as well today. It is, like I say, January, so you want to stay warm when you're on the bike, especially if you stop in to film some extra footage. That's when you get really cold. And then also got heated seats. They're 150 quid on this bike for the front and rear. The passenger's got their own control, whereas the rider can set it through the menus here, and I've got it on that button. Or you could use the little command wheel thing and go through all the menus. I mean, to be honest though, now that I've got that set, what could we change it to? You've got the active cruise control, which I think will, change the distance from the vehicle in front. Traction control, you can switch on and off. Damping and ride height. Ooh, I think we'll go damping. I'll try and find some decent roads on my little favorite test route up here and switch between the different damping settings. Now we've got the dynamic pack, so the sporty stuff, that's better brakes, more riding modes. So you've got dynamic and dynamic pro, which are a bit more sporty and customizable, as well as enduro pro, and yeah, then the dynamic suspension adjustments, so semi-active basically. Except on this bike we've got we've got variable spring rates as well as variable damping, which you'll typically find on other bikes. So I think both the monoshocks, because you've got the telelever front end, the monoshock on the front here as well has the extra capacity in the piggyback reservoir. That means they can put another pair of springs in there. So you've got the regular spring rate of the mainspring on the monoshock, and then if you want it even firmer, the bike can open up this little extra valve that opens up those springs on the piggyback shock and gives you an even firmer ride. So this, I really want to play with this semi-active system because it should be more adjustable than other systems and therefore give you a better variety of ride qualities and handling characteristics to better suit more, scenarios. Also, while we're waiting here, let me show you the sports screen. So if you go into your menu button and then across one and then down, it opens up the sports screen, which gives you speed at the top left, revs in the middle in a nice, clear, almost analog looking rev counter. And then you've got your lean angles. So maximum so far, since I've switched it on there, is 22 on the left, 21 degrees leaning right. And then you've also got the level of brake intervention, or, well, deceleration, I guess, because it's meters per second squared. And then traction control over this side, and what percentage of intervention you get in, which I guess if you're trying to ride quicker, after all this is a sports screen, then you're going to want to keep TC to a minimum because it's basically slowing you down. And so you might want to fine tune your throttle application to find the limits of grip without that kicking in and slowing you down. People do track days on these bikes, to be fair, so maybe it's not that surprising to get features like that. Now you've got, what is it? An extra 9 horsepower on this version versus the 1250. I think 6 newton meters more peak torque. What mode am I in? I'm in rain. Let's get it out of rain mode. Road, eco, rain, road. Let's go for road for now. Bit greasy, a little bit of salt and that sort of thing, so I'll take it a bit easy through these bends. But already it does feel quite nice and light and nimble. Now, I had a question on Instagram as to whether the quick shifter is smooth or not, and this one has it fitted as part of that dynamic pack. And it's kind of hard to judge when a bike's 300 miles in. It feels quite firm and mechanical. Slicker on the downshift, more of a clunk on the upshift, but who knows how that will progress with another 1, 2 or 3,000 miles on it. Might get a little bit smoother. Yeah, it's good on the down. Smoother on the up as the revs climb, as you might expect, I guess. Gosh, those grips get exceptionally hot. Now, this particular press bike is on Michelin Anarchy Adventures, which are sort of, they're mainly a road tyre, but a little bit, tiny bit of off-road ability. Kind of like, they look a bit like Pirelli MT60 RS tyres, that sort of flat track style where they've got a little bit of knobbliness, but they're not serious. But I think I'd have preferred the Metzlers, the Touron's Next 2s, which are also an option to have them fitted at the dealer. I think they might be the standard tyre actually, which are much more road focused. They look much more like a adventure touring tyre, and I can't really see myself trying to off-road this bike in this 2 weeks that I've got it. Even though it's been a bit drier this week than it has in previous weeks, it's still cold and it's not really drying out, look. And so most of the lanes around here will be sodden, and then it doesn't really have any crash bars or anything like that. So I don't really fancy getting stuck in the middle of nowhere. Maybe if they give me a chance to go to their adventure centre in Wales in the summer or something like that, then I'll get a chance to try it properly off-road. But unsupported, in the sort of weather we got at the moment and conditions, it'd probably be a bit unwise. So yeah, road tyres would be better for me, although those didn't feel too bad through those corners. But like I say, it's not really full lean conditions at the moment. I think what I'm liking about this bike is it definitely feels slimmer and less of a massive bulky machine to move around. The tank's a lot slimmer. Even the windscreen area feels quite slender, and it's definitely notably lighter to maneuver, but you still got the comfort levels, which are excellent, and the power and the smoothness and the cushiness. It does all the stuff you'd expect it to pretty well, but they've just kind of managed to squeeze it into a physically smaller bike. So a quick stop off for a look around the bike. I don't know what you think, but the looks are kind of growing on me. I'd love to know from you in the comments. I think this Tramontana edition with the gold and the green looks really quite nice, and new designs always take a little bit of time to bed in, but after spending a bit of time with it, it is starting to look quite good in my eyes. Specifically here around the frame does look very, very, very different. The cast aluminium subframe, the sheet steel frame, but it was a little bit like this when The new Ducati Monster came out last year when they switched from a trellis frame to a, you know, like a aluminium cast design that's sort of bolted to the front and rear, and the engine's most of the structure. And it did make it look really quite different. But for me, it's always going to be worth it if you get better performance and less weight and more rigidity and better handling. And so I think it's a trade-off I'd personally be willing to make. Now here's the exhaust, teeny weeny. In fact, let's give you a quick listen to it while we're parked up, because you probably can't hear it that well. Oh man, this always happens. So keyless has one of those things in it that means the key has to be moved in order to switch the bike on, and it's an anti-theft thing so that people can't use a repeater. So occasionally if you want to switch it on and it's been sat for a while, you have to take it out. I mean, I'm using the phone stash to store it just so I don't lose it while I'm out riding, but take it out, give it a quick shake, and that wakes it up. Oh, blind spot warnings. You just saw the lights flash in the mirrors there. That's where you get the blind spot warnings from the rear radar. Oh, I've left it in gear. Hang on. Let's nudge it back into neutral. Go around this side so you get a proper face full of sound. It sounds like a Boxer Twin. So I think for some people that's a good thing if you're a BMW fan. If you're not, then it's not. You know, it's a really funny one, this bike, because it's a ground up redesign. The frame's completely new. They've shed like 7 kilos off the engine and got some more power out of it with more displacement. So presumably that was a big undertaking as well. There's a new design for the telelever, new for the power lever shaft swing arm at the rear there. Loads more tech, absolutely loads of it. A completely new visual treatment as well, and yet it feels so familiar. The engine obviously has that Boxer character and sound and really torquey delivery. The handling's, you know, not a million miles off either. It's sort of easy on the steering with that unusual front suspension design, if not giving you like the most feedback ever, you know. The layout on the dash it's laid out in pretty much the same way, so you can navigate it easily. And this basic revs and speed layout is pretty much the same. There's more buttons on the switchgear, but effectively they're the same. They've just been slightly moved around over here. And the riding position as well, right? You've got these big wide bars, a fairly wide seat, perhaps not quite as cushy as the previous gen. This is the comfort seat with heating, but I don't think it feels quite as wide and soft, but still very comfortable. Peg position similar, and so I want to do some more miles, of course, to figure out what I like and don't like about this bike. But it feels like it's going to be hard to recommend it to anybody who has tried the 1250 and didn't like it, because, you know, it really is just more of the same, just sharpened up and made a bit more punchy, and it's a little bit lighter and more manageable. Maybe that's one area in which you might want to reconsider. But I think anyone who's tested a 1250 and maybe something like a KTM Super Adventure that's a bit more exciting perhaps in the way it delivers its power, same for the Multistrada V4, or even someone who's tried the Tiger 1200 and preferred that, unless there's one of these killer tech features like the way it does cruise control and collision warnings, or, you know, the adaptive ride height, which is slightly better implemented on here with that jack up feature as well. You know, unless there's one brutal killer blow, then I still don't think it's going to be the bike that turns someone onto BMW. What it will do though is really please anybody who's, well, I expect so in terms of the riding experience, who's got a 1250 or a 1200. It just feels like, on first impressions, a better, more feature-laden version of one of those bikes. And it has to be said as well, like, given that this bike outsells any other adventure bike and most other motorcycles by a massive margin, then that probably seems like the right thing to have done. Massive thanks for watching today, and obviously I'm going to be riding it a bit more this week. I've got a comparison with the 1250 GS coming, I'm going to ride it back to back later in the week with the Tiger 1200 Rally Pro, I think. And then I'll wrap up my thoughts at the end of the week. I've also got a podcast episode planned where I answer some of your questions about this bike. It's just such an important bike, and so I thought I'd give it full coverage. Hope everyone's doing well and managing to get out for a few miles on these sunnier but still quite cold days. And I'll catch you next time with, I hope, next week I'm dropping this bike off and picking up the ZX4RR. So that should be a complete change. Anyway, see you soon.